Ladies and gentlemen, coming up over on the left, you will see a waterfall. Psh, that is, of course, Schweitzer Falls, named for the great Dr. Albert Falls. Ha! Never get why that's funny. Welcome to Teacup for One. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees. Friends, it has been almost a year since I first proposed the idea that we could be getting a brand new cinematic universe bringing together films based on Disney parks attractions from around the world, or as I like to call it, the Disney Cinematic SEAverse. And the closer we get to the premiere of the Jungle Cruise film starring Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, the more likely, and least likely, it looks like that's actually going to happen. Okay, this is what we know so far. Let me get my hat. Okay, on the one hand, Disney has been low-key shrouding this movie in secrecy from the beginning. They've withheld character names for some of the biggest stars in the film, and they keep pushing back the release date, trying to ensure that this movie gets a big, wide theatrical release. Why would they put so much time, money, and effort into rolling out the red carpet for this specific film instead of just giving it a release on Disney Plus like they did with Mulan, or Soul, or Raya and the Last Dragon? Unless it's because this movie is meant to be the Iron Man of the Disney SEAverse, the movie that kicks everything off for 10 years worth of an epic franchise. But on the other hand, there's been talk that Ron Moore has signed a deal with Disney Plus to create a Disney Plus original series based around the Magic Kingdom, specifically focused on the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. So it seems like we are in fact getting some kind of SEAverse, but it's going to be television based instead of film based. So it's entirely possible that the Jungle Cruise movie will just be that, a Jungle Cruise movie, a standalone film. But on the other hand, the Jungle Cruise ride in Disneyland and Disney World are getting a slew of brand new updates this year, which are clearly meant to coincide with the release of the movie, which Dwayne Johnson even sort of somewhat kind of confirmed in an interview was part of the reason that the Jungle Cruise film's release date was pushed back. But Disney has confirmed that there will be no characters from the movie integrated into this reimagining of the Jungle Cruise attraction. So the question I have is, are we getting a SEAverse or not? Okay, breathe. Now, if you're new here, you're probably wondering, Matt, what is the Disney SEAverse? And I'm so glad you asked. Now, the Disney SEAverse is a personal theory that I've been running with, that the Jungle Cruise film is going to kick off the next great cinematic universe. Something to rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Something to show us what the DC Extended Universe could have been. However, it's a cinematic universe based around Disney park attractions. Because, if you didn't know, all the Disney park rides that aren't based on existing Disney films are a part of their own franchise. That is all based around the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, or SEA. Now, SEA has had a presence in the parks for a few years, and I've done some videos talking about the Society of Explorers and Adventurers already, but basically it's an Imagineering backstory that ties together some of the greatest Disney parks attractions, like the Haunted Mansion, the Tower of Terror, Big Thunder Mountain, and yes, the Jungle Cruise. And of course, part of this theory is just coming from a place of me really wanting to see good movies based on these Disney parks attractions. But logically, it all adds up. Cinematic universes are all the rage right now, and Disney does have an established track record of making films based on some of their most popular attractions, with some films based on attractions already announced as being in the works. So, it all adds up. Make it all part of one giant franchise that would cross-promote the parks with the movies, and in the end, give Matt a ton of films based on his favorite rides. I mean, it's win, win, win. But one thing we know for sure is this: whether or not the Jungle Cruise movie actually introduces us to the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, the Jungle Cruise attraction in Disneyland and Walt Disney World is 100% guaranteed, confirmed to be getting a fancy SEA makeover. On January 25th, 2021, Disney announced that the Jungle Cruise attraction would be getting some major updates. First and foremost, these were changes that were being made as part of an inclusion strategy to update the ride so that it would keep all of its classic Adventureland flair and its punny humor while getting rid of some very outdated cultural depictions. Which is a really fancy way to say, maybe get rid of the racism. But this was also presented as a promise to plus the experience by adding on more story elements and turning the Jungle Cruise into more of a narrative experience and less of a cruise pointing at robot animals. Hey, look at that robot hippo. And over there, it's a robot snake. Am I a robot? At the time, we didn't have any details about what this new narrative experience was going to be about. However, some eagle-eyed viewers did notice that Imagineer Kevin Lively was wearing a Society of Explorers and Adventurers pin while he was announcing these updates. And now, as of March 19th, 2021, Disney has officially confirmed that the Jungle Cruise's new storyline will be heavily based in sea lore. The Disney Parks blog published an article in the form of a published interview dating back to the 1930s with the Jungle Cruise's founder, Alberta Falls. Now, Alberta Falls isn't exactly a new character in the world of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. She dates back to 2015 when Disney opened up the Jungle Cruise themed restaurant, Skipper Canteen, of which she was the founder. And according to the backstory, Alberta Falls is the granddaughter of Dr. Albert Falls. And can I just say that I personally think it is magical and hilarious that one mediocre pun spawned an entire fictional family's legacy. Yeah, that's right. Back when the Jungle Cruise was supposed to be taken seriously and they took you past the waterfall, they said the waterfall was named Schweitzer Falls after Dr. Albert Schweitzer. But then when the skipper started playing around and adding all the puns, they switched that joke up and said, oh look, it's Schweitzer Falls, named of course after the famous Dr. Albert Falls. I'm so glad this ride is getting an update. So, this mediocre joke just planted this character name in everyone's head, and then, years later, Dr. Albert Falls became an official character in Disney Parks canon. As the story goes, Albert Falls was a member of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, and in 1911 he founded the Jungle Navigation Company so that he could move cargo throughout the jungle. Because if the Star Wars prequels taught us anything, it's that a really good backstory needs to be about trade politics. Dr. Albert Falls had a son, Albert Falls Jr., but I'll just be honest, nobody really cares about Albert Falls Jr. because he wasn't an explorer, he was just a historian, and really his only purpose in this story is to reproduce, which he did. He met an artist in India named Sneh. The two of them got married and they had a daughter, Alberta Falls. Alberta grew up traveling the world with her parents, and at the age of 8, they decided to let her live full-time in the jungle with her grandfather, Dr. Albert Falls. At the age of 16, Alberta became the sole owner of the Jungle Navigation Company when her grandfather mysteriously disappeared in 1927. Conveniently right before the Great Depression. So my question is, did he actually disappear mysteriously, or was he just unloading a massive company onto the shoulders of a teenager right on the brink of a great economic crisis? Who's to say? Because of the Great Depression, there were less cargo deliveries happening, and Alberta had to figure out how to rebrand the Jungle Navigation Company to keep the business afloat. Afloat. That wasn't even on purpose. That was when one of her skippers suggested that instead of doing deliveries, she started giving tours of the jungle. Or jungle cruises. The idea worked, hence the Jungle Cruise ride, and eventually Alberta decided to turn the Jungle Navigation Company's headquarters into a restaurant for all of their customers, hence Skipper Canteen, also known as the restaurant where you can eat an entire fried fish. Originally, the only depiction we had of Alberta was a cubist painting that hangs in the Skipper Canteen. However, this brand new post from the Disney Parks blog finally gives us a more naturalistic look at Alberta, alongside a pretty fun interview. Aside from this beautiful new depiction of Alberta Falls, the interview doesn't really give us a ton of new information that we didn't have already. But the biggest takeaway here is that Disney is pushing the Society of Explorers and Adventurers backstory in the American theme parks in a way we have never seen before. And you would think that this would support my theory that the Jungle Cruise film is going to tie into sea somehow, because there is no way that Disney would revamp their ride with a rich sea backstory simultaneous with releasing the Jungle Cruise film and have both of those things follow totally different and unrelated plot lines, right? Right? Well, it looks like that's exactly what they're doing. Looks like. Clearly, the Jungle Cruise attraction has a fully fleshed out backstory surrounding the Jungle Navigation Company, and Alberta Falls is a key character in that backstory, especially around the 1930s, which is when the Jungle Cruise movie is taking place. Just going off of the trailers, what we know about the Jungle Cruise movie is that Dwayne Johnson seems to be an independent skipper. His name is Frank Wolf. He doesn't have any apparent connections to the Jungle Navigation Company, and in fact seems to work for somebody named Nilo Nimolato. We'll get to Nimolato in a second. So I think it's safe to say that the Jungle Cruise film isn't about the Jungle Navigation Company. But I still think the events might take place adjacent to the Jungle Navigation Company. That is to say, I still believe that the Jungle Cruise movie is gearing up to introduce us to the society of explorers and adventurers on the big screen, but it's doing so sparingly and as a very calculated move, because the Jungle Cruise ride is getting a once-in-a-generation remodel. Like, I don't think Disney would take the risk of basing this entire reimagining of the attraction around a movie that hasn't even come out yet, around a movie that they don't know for sure will be a success. So the smart move, make the ride independently awesome and shape the movie around the attraction and not vice versa. So that is to say, just like sprinkle in little pieces of sea lore into the film that can potentially open the door for a future franchise. Think of it like how Iron Man showed up at the end of the Hulk movie, or how they just mentioned Stephen Strange's name in Captain America Winter Soldier years before the Doctor Strange movie actually came out. I think the equivalent here would be having Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt's characters just crossing paths with the Jungle Navigation Company, and maybe even Alberta Falls herself. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. I was scrolling through the cast list on IMDb again, and of course there's no character that's credited as Alberta Falls, but there was this one actress listed, Sulem Calderon. This is her first major film credit, and she's apparently playing a character named Quila. Now let's just put that aside for a second, because I know, obviously Quila sounds nothing like Alberta Falls. But Sulem is 30 years old. She's around the same age that Alberta Falls would be during the events of the Jungle Cruise movie. And beyond that, what is it? Oh yes, she looks literally exactly like Alberta Falls. Just look. Sulem, Alberta Falls. Sulem, Alberta Falls. So one of two things is happening here. Either Sulem Calderon is secretly playing Alberta Falls in the Jungle Cruise film, and Disney Imagineering modeled the first official look at Alberta Falls after Sulem Calderon, since she is the on-screen embodiment of Alberta Falls, or it's all a coincidence. So that's where my head's at right now with the Disney Cinematic SEAverse. I don't think the movie is going to be focused on the same narrative as the ride, but I do think the ride and the film are going to exist in the same universe. A universe that introduces all of us to our new favorite Disney character, Alberta Falls, who may or may not, but probably most definitely is going to be played by Sulem Calderon. A cinematic universe that is guaranteed to expand to include a remake of Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Wait, what? That's right. Remember, the Jungle Cruise trailer has already shown us out-of-place submarines.
Oh my gosh.
Who brings a submarine to the Amazon?
Fire!
And remember that name that was on Frank's door in the trailer? Nilo Nimolato. What are the chances that that's Captain Nimolato? Captain Nemo. But I don't have time to get into that now, friends, because this concludes yet another episode of Teacup 4-1. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you believe that the Jungle Cruise film is actually going to introduce us to the society of explorers and adventurers on the big screen? And if you want to be the first to know about future SEAverse videos, specifically the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea theory, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. If you haven't subscribed already, you've got another chance coming up right now. It's super easy. All you have to do is click on my face. Thanks for joining me again today, everyone. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the T cup for 1. Go away.